Hello, welcome to today's webinar. We are happy to have you with us for this National Grid session, Zero Net Energy Residential Forum. I am Connie Empress, Communications Manager here at New Buildings Institute. First, you are muted and we cannot hear you. This helps keep the background noise down so that everyone can better hear the speakers. I want to direct you to the dashboard that you should be able to see on the right-hand side of your screen. If you are having technical difficulties and cannot see the slides or hear our speakers, you can use this question pane to let us know and we will help you as we go. We will take questions at the end of the presentation. Please ask questions in the same question pane. Please take a moment to answer the survey at the end of the webinar. We consider your input in the planning of future sessions. If you are seeking AIA credits, this survey is where you will share your AIA number for credit submission. This session is being recorded. All registrants will receive an email tomorrow with links to the recording and slides for the session. If you need a certificate of attendance for your records, it will also be part of tomorrow's follow-up. Speaking of AIA credits, the learning objectives for the session are there for you to read. I'd like to pass the microphone to Kevin Rose, Senior Strategy and Policy Analyst at National Grid.
Thanks, Connie, and thanks to everyone for joining today. If you are used to hearing from my colleagues Laura Redormer and Mona Chandra on these webinars and past experiences, I'm taking over for them and excited to do so. So I'll be leading National Grid's Zero Energy strategy efforts. So very excited to virtually introduce myself to you for those who I haven't met. On the screen in front of you now is not what we're talking about today, but is very related. I hope you very much enjoy the case study that we talk about today, but if you want more, and I'm hoping that you do, we in a couple days have an additional webinar coming up with the project team, and the big difference, the big value add here is we're going to be having a virtual tour component of it. So I've seen a sneak peek of the virtual tour. It looks very cool. You'll hear more about the project later on, so I'll let other people my co-panelists build more hype than I will hear at the start. But it's a very cool project, and the virtual tour is really well done. So before we go further, I wanted to, while you read the agenda, I wanted to launch a poll and find out who is here. So please select the one that most applies to you.
Okay, just a few more seconds for anybody who hasn't voted. All right. There you are.
Okay, so myself and my co-panelists will be targeting our information based on these results. So very good. Back to the agenda. We always want to start off these National Grid NBI webinars with the latest on the offerings and incentives available from National Grid to support this work, and then get into some best practices and case studies, and that's exactly what we have here. I won't read it. Hopefully you already know what's coming because we're excited and signed up for it, but we'll start in the theory and the best practices realm, and then see how that is put into practice with a local case study. And again, I think it's a pretty cool project. And we'll wrap with some Q&A. So briefly, I'll give you in 2 slides the programmatic status of zero energy and zero net energy for National Grid Rhode Island. So first, I want to end of year, end of 2020, I want to look back at where we've been. And over the past 3 years, we've offered a zero net energy pilot. You can see the some of the cromulent features of the webinar, of the pilot here. I won't read them out for you. And if you want more, there's a link for details on the incentives. But basically, we took a multifaceted effort to build education to build general awareness, and then targeted technical training to build market capacity, and then back that up with incentives and marketing support to really bring these projects forward. And we've had many projects come through, and currently have hundreds of projects in our pipeline. So some really cool things happening through this pilot. And the intent of the pilot was always to inform a full-fledged program offering, and that's what we're bringing to you new in 2021. So come this January, our new construction program will look pretty similar. If you compare the features from the last slide to this one, they're pretty similar. And you'll, we're not changing, we're not sweeping the rug out from anyone. We're keeping the offerings pretty similar, but we're looking to better integrate the zero energy incentives for performance, as well as the support that we provide for certifying the project to one of the many standards, as well as professional certification. We're looking to better integrate that into our program. And so you'll see a full set of these program materials will be available soon. Until then, I encourage you, if you have interest in this program, to call the telephone number that you see on the screen here. That's your best way to get connected. If you have a project you want to enroll in the program, or you just have general inquiries on the program, I've also listed on this slide a couple things that we're looking into based on the lessons learned from our pilot. With that, look at the past and look ahead to the future. I want to take no more time from my panelists, who have a lot of good information to share. So I'll pass it on to Webley.
Hi, everyone. My name is Webley Bowles. I'm a project manager at New Buildings Institute. I'm happy to have had the chance to work with Kevin Rose and the fine folks at National Grid as they're working to raise more awareness around the Zero Net Energy program. Today, I want to quickly walk through the 7 steps to cost-effective zero energy homes. NBI worked on this project with a local advocacy group called Zero Energy Ready Oregon. And we've studied hundreds of zero energy buildings over the years and kind of consolidated the essential steps that all zero energy projects need to consider. All programs will have different variations on these unique details, but in essence, these 7 steps are really important for zero energy homes. So I'll walk through each of them. The first step is set project energy goals early. We always know that whenever you set goals up front, you're more likely to achieve them. So working with the team to gain buy-in and have a clear understanding of the energy use intensity, or the HERS score, kWh per square foot per year, is really essential to make sure everyone agrees that that is an achievable goal. Also identifying if there are any certification programs, LEED, HERS, any requirements that need to be considered up front is essential, because when those decisions are made later, it can be costly to correct or add things to the project that would be much easier to do in the beginning. The second step is to optimize the building shape and orientation. And this really starts with studying the site and looking at bioclimatic analysis, understanding the wind patterns, how much rainfall is on the site, what is the sunlight possible, and how can you take advantage of what's naturally there to light, heat, and cool the home. So how can we not use electric energy, but actually use nature to do what we need to do within the home? So simple shapes really help with constructability. So and Sheridan is a great example of that. Trying not to be too complicated with the shape is often helpful, as well as looking at energy modeling, doing that energy modeling early, and making sure that you have the right orientation or the optimal orientation for your site and for what's possible for energy efficiency. Another thing to consider is the solar budget. So once you've known your shape and you know what's possible, how much energy can you actually collect from solar on site? And with that information, it can help you also set a target for how much energy that building can consume over the course of the year. The third step is design for high performance envelope. And the three most important things here to consider is a tight envelope, a lot of insulation, and minimize thermal bridging. And we do this all to reduce energy use and minimize the heat transfer through the building's envelope. Doing so allows us to reduce the HVAC size and minimize first costs associated with that HVAC system. We also want to look at the window to wall ratio and make sure that we are being intentional about the size of the windows, where the windows are facing, and minimizing any heat transfer through the envelope, or thoughtfully minimizing heat transfer. Fourth is specifying high efficiency mechanical systems. And as I said before, this really starts with the envelope. By making that envelope a tight envelope, we can minimize the infiltration through there and right size the HVAC system, saving first costs. We also want to control for ventilation. So in many cases, you'll see in zero energy homes that there's a separate heating system from the ventilation system. And this is because in a tighter home, you need to control where that ventilation comes from. It's not just infiltrating from holes in the wall, but it's intentional. And it's also important to consider comfort and health. So it's not just a matter of downsizing the HVAC system and telling everybody to put a sweater on, but it's a matter of making sure that it's actually comfortable and making sure that there's proper ventilation to improve the indoor air quality of the home. The fifth step is selecting efficiency appliances and lighting. All LED lighting is pretty common these days. Most people know about Energy Star appliances and equipment, and so those are becoming easier to purchase. It's also important to consider that when you reduce your heating and cooling, which is often the highest energy intensity in our home, that actually increases the pie of how much water heating and plug loads you're using. So you want to consider those as well. So with hot water, we're seeing more heat pump water heaters coming onto the market that are kind of right priced for individual homes, as well as with the water heater, making sure that the plumbing is actually being designed. So the distribution of the plumbing is designed in a way that it's using less energy because you have smaller runs to each hot water source. The sixth step is offsetting with renewable energy. So once the energy use has been optimized through steps 1 through 5, we want to offset that energy with renewables. And this is where that early analysis really pays off, because we've taken a look at the site, we know what's available there, we've optimized our building for efficiency. But if on-site energy is not available, there are other options. Solar Ready is a fantastic option, which is making sure that there's conduit runs for future solar on the roof, that there's the structural stability for solar on the roof, and that there's room at the electrical panel. Community solar and other offsite renewables are also an option, often depends on the program that you're using. Renewable energy credits or power from the utility is also a great option to get to a zero energy home. The final step is commissioning and monitor. So commissioning just optimizes the system. So we've designed the best that we could, but sometimes things happen during installation. And we want to make sure that the systems are working as functionally as possible. And we want to monitor and manage the energy that we're using. So sub-metering comes into play here, looking at the energy or putting a monitor on each end use and being able to monitor that. So if something does go awry, it's easier to identify where the higher energy using appliance or system is. And then finally, third-party certifications. So third-party certifications is a great way to be recognized for the hard work that has gone into the project and to share your success and kind of make sure that other people are aware of what you've done and spread the word about zero energy buildings. So these are the 7 steps to cost-effective zero. As I mentioned, these are some of the essential things to consider. There's many more. We'll get into that next with the case study. So I want to hand it over to Jonathan right now so that he can share more about the Sheridan case study. Thank you.
Thanks, Webley. Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to give a quick introduction to the rest of our panelists. I'm joined with Haley Hardwick Whitman with One Neighborhood Builders, and she's a Rose Fellow, and John Erickson with Clear Result, who is our verifier and acting as our passive house consultant. My name is Jonathan Knowles. I'm a professor of architecture at Rhode Island School of Design and an architect with Briggs & Knowles Architecture and Design in Providence. This project really started with the city reaching out to the Department of Architecture at RISD because of our successful relationship with a number of other projects. And they were looking to consolidate unused lots in the city and turn those over to not-for-profit developers to establish zero energy affordable housing, which is a really admirable goal and one that led me to start a design studio working with the city. And the city introduced us to One Neighborhood Builders, the developer and contractor, to actually get this done. The studio started with 2 teams. We looked at houses as modules and in aggregate, so they could actually join together if need be. This is the first unit, so we're calling it now Unit A. This is the first team and the second team of the 2 prototypes. The project then migrated to Onlyville, where One Neighborhood Builders is based. And we basically looked at the prototypical lot in Providence is roughly 40 by 80. So it went from the aggregation scheme to an infill prototype. And so this is a site plan of Unit A. The plans are actually very straightforward, but generous for a 950 square foot home. We have a great room, master bed downstairs and bath, full bath. And then upstairs, we have a smaller bedroom and a half bath at the top of the stairs. You can see our model, 2 big porches, one to the south and one off the bedroom on the second floor. That could potentially be filled in to become a sunroom. So this was something my students were interested in, is how these houses could transform over time. The second prototype was called New Levels. And again, that was based on a project that could change over time. You can see a large double height space in the living room and a large second floor terrace. And their idea was that this could be infilled in the future and become either a ground floor apartment and an upstairs separate unit. The projects have evolved a little bit, but not that much to current. You can see they're very similar, Unit A on the left, Unit B on the right. They're still roughly about 950, 960 gross square feet. The Unit A is now, they're almost done. Unit B is slated to be done this spring. So I'll give you a quick view of the renderings. You'll notice in future slides coming up that the end results are remarkably similar to these renderings. Unit A, Unit B. And I'll pass it over now to Haley Whitman.
Hi, everyone. My name is Haley Hardwick-Whitman. I'm the general contractor and project manager of this project for One Neighborhood Builders. Oh, already messed this up. Okay, so this is a picture of us, our organization at the groundbreaking last fall. So One Neighborhood Builders, we're a community development corporation that develops affordable housing and works to engage the community in the greater Providence area to cultivate healthy, vibrant, and safe communities. So these were the main, these were the main goals of the project. To ultimately serve as a replicable model for the future of affordable housing. We wanted to demonstrate that sustainable, healthy homes can be attainable for everyone. We are also trying to address 4 realities within the housing market. The first one being that larger homes and larger plots of land are expensive to build and maintain, especially in the urban core area where we are in Olneyville, due to property taxes, which add a substantial burden to housing affordability. The second one being the gap between available public subsidies and what it actually costs to build or buy a home affordably is just expanding. The third one is just that demographic trends indicate a mismatch between the current housing supply options and the demand for new housing models. So you can think about older folks living in homes that become too large for their needs, or younger households that are renting instead of building equity and buying a home in their neighborhood. And then the last one being just that the market needs to respond to the growing demand for buyers to practice sustainability through consumer choice. So providing more housing that is both energy and cost efficient. So our design team, we're lucky to have an amazing design team. As you know, we are the owner, developer, and contractor. The design and architect was done by the RISD students and then kind of formalized by Jonathan Knowles. The builders are Building Futures, which is a local organization that it does workforce training for folks that are interested in getting into the building industry. Our energy consultant is ClearResult. Solar company is Sunwatt Solar, which is also in Providence. Our site contractor is Descenzo, who did all the utilities and excavating. Civil is Deprete. Mechanical and plumbing is Pinnacle, and electrical is M&M Electric. Okay, here we go. So funding. So the cost of building sustainably tends to have higher initial costs, which can deter developers, especially when it comes to affordable developing. So as you can see, we have 6 sources, which is like more sources than we typically have for a project. So we just had to be more creative in figuring out how we're gonna pay for this development. We're selling each home for folks that are in between 80% and 100% of AMI, which is the area median index. So for Providence, that means about $145,000. And if you guys aren't familiar with AMI market rate, costs are typically geared towards 120 AMI and above. So although the small homes were designed with small lots in mind, a recent HUD neighborhood assessment had been completed and deemed this area at 35 Sheridan Street to be underutilized, and it was a priority for Olneyville to revitalize. It's adjacent to the Woonsocket River bike path, which is a great asset for the community, and this area was just vacant brownfield. So the students had conducted some preliminary solar studies once we chose this lot to help determine the placement of the homes. This arrangement was further refined to create an inclusive semicircle shape for all the neighbors to be visible and have access to this shared green space in the middle. And then, so here's a view of a rendering that the RISD students did to kind of show what that area could look like. And so then our local solar company, SunWatt, gave us a more technical analysis of the sun exposure to determine the exact placement of where the panel should go. So we ended up with 78 panels total, and each panel is 320 kilowatts. So the system, the entire system is 24.96 kilowatts. So this project is, as you can see by these numbers, it's projected to be net positive energy. So you can see up here, it's estimated to consume 5,568 kilowatt hours and estimated to produce 7,239 kilowatt hours. And if you compare this to a conventional household energy consumption in New England, over here you can see it's about 28,574 kilowatt hours per year. And that number doesn't even take into account the fact that our project is producing our own source energy on site. So you can actually multiply this this number by like a factor of 2.8 or so, and which turns the conventional consumption to about 50,000 kilowatt hours per year. And then down here, we just have some images of the solar monitoring software that we're going to be using. And it's tuned in to each panel, so you can really closely monitor the performance of how the whole system is operating. Then the next section, we're going to go into the main building elements that allow for the project to be Passive House certified as well as net zero. And I'm just going to give an overview, and then Jonathan can explain how they're implemented. So optimizing solar gain for the climate, this has to do with selecting the right window performance that makes sense for orientation. Continuous insulation, so minimal thermal bridging along the building exterior or the building envelope. Having an airtight building enclosure, so John will talk about blower door tests that we conducted. Balancing the heat and moisture recovery ventilation, so having a really tight building, it's important to have really excellent air exchange. So we do that through our ERV. And then finally, having an efficient, minimally sized active system, so lessening the energy demand on the project.
And just one additional feature, if you'll notice in the diagrams, is the shallow frost footing, which many municipalities are unfamiliar with, but City of Providence approved. And that resulted in basically a slab on grade and then an insulative skirt where we didn't have to go down 4 feet to the frost line, but we went horizontally 4 feet to take advantage of the Earth's energy. And so this was somewhat unique because it's a major cost reduction measure for a passive house. So we'll pass it off to John Erickson, who's been working with us on site with the contractors to ensure the passive house details are implemented.
Okay, hello everyone. So just to back up quickly to one thing that Kevin mentioned earlier. So I'm going to go through a couple of the the critical construction details at Sheridan, but I wanted to mention that I'll be doing a much more detailed tour of the project and get really into the nitty-gritty of the details and the building science behind it on the 17th coming up. So if you'd like to join that, if you want more information, please join us on the 17th. So just to also to talk about Webley's, when she was talking about the 7 steps of building to net zero performance, I think the thing to really, she mentioned step 3 was the, the envelope. Do I have control over this, guys?
Yeah.
Click into the window. There
Yeah.
you go.
Okay, there we go. I think the critical element to this style of construction is the shell of the building. The shell is if you build a robust shell, you can significantly reduce the loads, and when you get the loads down really low, then you can start using really small equipment, and these things have an effect, a much stronger effect. So Jonathan mentioned the frost protected shallow footing, and here's his detail here. And you'll see this is this wing of 3 inches of XPS that essentially it moves the frost line closer to the surface. And what we did here on this detail, you can see this is R40 underneath the slab, and then R15 around the perimeter here. And in order to get this correct, we used they used a spray foam on the perimeter like this, and you can see out in the field is the 2 inches stacked, a 4 sheet stacked of 2 inches R40 out in the center. And here's a photo of the wings that Jonathan mentioned of the footing before it's backfilled, so you can get an idea of what that looks like. And you can see the cement board on top that serves as protection, but also that cement board comes up the side and can be used later for applying the stucco coat to the exterior of the footing of the slab, excuse me. So so what I did, we've done our energy modeling for these houses is complete, and what I did is I took my completed model for building A, the light box, and I built a second model, and everything being equal, the only thing that I changed was that I put the slab insulation in one of them I set that to Rhode Island code minimum, so we could get an idea of how much better these houses are performing than if the house is built to Rhode Island code minimums. And you can see here that the green is the Sheridan, and if you look at the blue is uninsulated slab, orange is R10, either on the perimeter or 2 feet under is code in Rhode Island. So you can see the significant difference just from insulating the slab, how much you can bring the loads down. Another factor to building this robust shell is having not just using a lot of insulation, but making sure that you've got a layer of continuous insulation included somewhere in the assembly. And this was accomplished with 4 inches of exterior polyiso on the outside And for this project, one neighborhood used a company that sells repurposed polyiso that they pull off of commercial buildings. So here's an example. And just to point out also, I think earlier, you can see the renderings that Jonathan and his students had made. And here's one of the Building A examples, and you can see how close that came to the rendering. It's really pretty remarkable. It looks really great. But this building here is, you can see the polyiso being installed on the exterior, and this will be the rain shield, the rain cladding here. The drainage plane behind the strapping that the cladding will be attached to. And here's a photo of the polyiso on the exterior. So this is interior framing insulation is blown fiberglass. And what we do with the fiberglass, this in all dense pack products, is you want to weigh it and make sure that it's being installed at the correct density, because the density will affect not only the R value, but if it's installed too loose, it can settle and create gaps up at the top of the bays, framing bays. So importance of thermal breaks, Webley mentioned this earlier. So I think that, when you're creating thermal breaks, yes, of course, you are increasing the overall weighted UA of an assembly, and you're reducing loads, but you're also mitigating cold surfaces. And for Passive House, what they recommend is that your interior surfaces are no greater than 7.2 degrees Fahrenheit from your thermostat set point. So putting in good windows and mitigating all these thermal bridges is how you achieve that. And the end result is going to be that the house is going to be much more comfortable also. This is an example of, these are the windows installed at Sheridan, which is a Zola UPVC window. And this is an example, it's a tilt and turn. We put a short video to show you how these windows work. These windows are manufactured in Poland. So the nice thing about these is that you can vent the house when it's raining outside by just using the tilt feature. This is the window installation detail. So these windows are a little different to install than your typical thin windows that you see in traditional construction. There's some added elements to the install, liquid flashing applied to the exterior and on the interior as a seal. Up here you can see there's some, you're trying to mitigate any of these thermal bridges that you can. So the install is a little more difficult, but not prohibitively so. So one of the other really important pieces to lowering your loads and creating a very robust shell is having a very, very sound air barrier that is continuous. For Passive House, the requirement is for air tightness is 0.06 CFM50 to square foot of shell, which is a very low number for most traditional builders. In order to do that at Sheridan, the technique that they used is the air barrier goes up and over the top using zip wall and zip sheathing. So the only place to be concerned about accidental air leakage, once you have all of the walls and ceilings taped and positively air sealed, is the connection between the sill plate and the concrete. So what they used here is this product called Triple Guard, which is a traditional sill seal, but it's got 2 folds of tape, one that comes up onto the sheathing, one that goes down to the concrete. So you put the sill seal in between, you can see it here, between the plate and the concrete. Once you have your sheathing on, then you stick this tape up and down, and now you've got a solid positive connection between those 2 materials. And because sill sealer alone will eventually not work as well as when it's originally installed, because the wood will shrink. So this is a positive connection that you know will last. And so the numbers, these are my midpoint blower door numbers for the first 3 buildings. And building 1 was 96 CFM, building 2 was about 62, building 3 was 43. So you can see that the building futures is improving as they go here, and they're picking up, figuring out where they're making mistakes. And by the way, this 43 CFM is a very, very low number. This is an excellent midpoint blower door number, much lower than what the allowable minimum is, which for this particular house is about 178 CFM, which is good because they'll be adding more. So this is a shell test. This is the house plywooded and taped with no windows and no doors, essentially. So, and obviously no other mechanical penetration. So as they add windows and mechanical penetrations, there's going to be more leakage. So you want to make sure that you have this nice buffer to so that you stay underneath that 178 CFM. I did the same thing for air tightness. Everything else being equal, if you set these houses at Rhode Island code minimum, which is 7 ACH 50, these are the differences in the loads, in the design load and annual loads. And this is remarkable to me. This is 12 million BTUs reduction just by building to passive house air tightness standards. This is the effective leakage area. Is if you were to take all of the leaks and holes in the shell and combine them into one hole, how big it would be. That is called the effective leakage area. So over here on the right, you can see if you added all the holes together in the building that blew 43 CFM, that would be about 2.4 square inches. The maximum allowable for FIAS is about 9.7 square inches, and the Rhode Island maximum allowable for code minimum is about almost 58 square inches, which is almost like having an open window, or at least halfway open window. So it's a huge difference, let's say that. And you can see what that means to the loads in the last slide I just showed you. Am I moving here? So mechanical ventilation is required not just for FIAS and really tight houses, but it's essentially required for pretty much all new residential construction. Here in Rhode Island, the mechanical code is if you blow a 5 ACH 50 or less in your house, then you need to have mechanical ventilation of some kind. So this type of ventilation is not just for really tight houses, but in a passive house and in really tight houses, it becomes sort of extra important. And the strategy at Sheridan is for ventilation is this ERV, which is stacked above the second floor bathroom, centralized in the house so that the duct runs could be as short and straight as possible. And the reason that you want to, as you can see here, here's the 2 details. I think this is house A and this is house B. And you can see how the ERVs are stacked. And another nice detail is that Jonathan included in this design is to the exhaust and supply are around the corner from each other. So it's a nice detail to keep them apart that way. But the reason you want to have short straight runs in your ventilation system in particular for why it's so critical in passive house certification is because there are requirements for your ventilation system exhaust for your bathrooms and for your kitchen. And you need to hit those numbers. So it's 20 CFM exhaust or 50 intermittent for bathrooms and 25 and 100 for kitchens. And if you're not getting those exhaust numbers in your bathrooms and kitchen, and you need to boost up your system, that's gonna, number one, it's gonna use more energy to run the fan at a higher speed, and number two, it's gonna bring down the efficiency of the entire system, which is gonna hurt your energy model. So here, there were a few mistakes with the ducting at Sheridan that got corrected. You could see this long sort of unnecessary sweep and this couple extra 90s here. And you want it to look more like this, nice and straight and single long sweep like this. This way you're reducing friction in this ductwork, and hopefully you're able to run your ERV at the lowest setting and still achieve your exhaust flows that you need. So that's a quick rundown of the exterior insulation and slab and airtightness. There's a lot more that went into this project and a lot more details to talk about, but this is sort of the overall energy model results. And this is in comparison to Rhode Island State Building Code. So I essentially created two energy models, one as it is set to passive house certification, and one where all of the energy factors are set to Rhode Island State Building Code, and you can see the difference. So this is without solar panels, and this 92% reduction in heating annual consumption is pretty dramatic if you consider that the main thing that's happening here is very airtight, extra insulation, and good windows. Those are kind of like the big three things that are making this number so high. So this is I did a quick little calculation on this because I thought it'd be interesting. The amount of energy that would be needed to heat one of these houses set to state code minimums for 50 years would heat the same house at passive house certification for 580 years. And the projected annual cost for heating for one of these houses is about $126 a year. And I think that's it. This is a drone video that we have of the site here that I'm gonna start. And I think that now is a good time for questions, maybe. Well, you guys can check this out.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. So I'm going to ask if all the panelists, this stopped playing for some reason. Let's see if I can get it to play again. As that's playing, I'm going to ask if the panelists can put themselves on camera so we can all see their lovely faces today. And there we go. That's still playing. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. I have a couple of questions that have come in. So I'm going to go ahead. The first question is for Haley. Haley, what are some of the unique features that have been important to educate the home buyers about the homes?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we actually, before I started, One Neighborhood Builders did conduct a few focus groups to kind of explain what our concept was and get feedback from the community in terms of shaping the design. As they've been built, people bike by and have stopped and asked questions, and everyone thinks they look really cool, but there is kind of a knowledge gap, or kind of people need to be convinced that less space is better, because, you know, the American dream is bigger is better. So basically, that was the main hurdle, is explaining that you're getting a really high quality home that has amazing energy efficiency and air quality and will last forever. So basically, it's quality over quantity is what we're trying to convey.
Great, thank you. Second question came in is for Jonathan. So what design obstacles made it more difficult to design to zero net energy?
Is the word obstacles?
Obstacles, yeah.
It really wasn't any obstacles. It was a goal from the beginning. And as you outlined in your 7 points, we did exactly what you outlined. Our students were running WWOOFie Passive all the way along to make sure we hit our targets. We didn't send it into Passive House US until the working drawings were complete for certification. But we were using the design tools to design the project. It is a little difficult, and John can elaborate, to do a passive house with such a small volume. But we've done it, and again, there were the 3 simple strategies: airtight, super insulated exterior, and really good windows. And One Neighborhood Builders was on board, and we were able to get it done.
So I have an added obstacle. Sorry, Jonathan, are you done?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just working with Building Futures. This was, which is a training program. This was their first passive house. So before we even started, we had John Erickson come in and review some of the kind of atypical details that they were going to be constructing that is different and may seem kind of over the top from the way you conventionally build.
So John, did any of the team members from Building Futures struggle with any of those details?
Well, I think that they knocked it out of the park, to be honest with you. If you go back, think back on the slide of the midpoint blower doors that I did, where they were getting progressively better, starting from 96 CFM and moving down to 43. Even that first building at 96 CFM that's still half of the required minimum for passive house allowable, which is excellent for a first-time build. And then 43 CFM on a midpoint, that's a really, really low number. That might be, from my experience, that might be the lowest one I've seen so far anywhere. So it's excellent. If you look at this last slide, the building on the left is building 1, the one in the center is building 2, and building 3 is on the right. And I think this is a really good shot to show you this sort of up and over air tightness detail, where you can see the zip tape on here going all the way up. You know, all the perimeters are sealed like this. And I think that what was happening from the 3 buildings is, on the first building, there were some nail holes that got missed. You know, the guys might have missed a stud when they were nailing the sheathing on, and then just backed the nail out and not filled it, these kind of things. And as they progressed, they started being a little more careful with these, and it's just gotten better and better. I'm excited to see how building 4 and 5 come out. So
I just want to add real quick that what's been really great about Building Futures is that they're a training organization. So their students are learning on this high performance type building from the get-go. So they're going to have those skills going into the workforce and be super competitive with everybody else.
Yeah, and to that point too, I think that sort of eliminated the this rush for margins, you know, like trying to build real quickly to get to the next job. These guys are here to learn, and they're doing a really good job. They have been.
See, this next question, I'm not sure who wants to answer this, maybe Jonathan. Can you share how not including natural gas either positively or negatively impacted the homes?
Natural gas is a carbon fuel. So that was from day one, no carbon. So it was designed to be solar. And as John Erickson mentioned, with all of these passive house strategies, all of the loads go way down, so we could have a very small electrical system to run the homes. So gas was never even considered as an option for fossil fuels.
Also, from a construction kind of management side of things, it was one less utility line we had to trench for. And this particular site didn't have any street frontage, so connecting to utility lines has been a little bit difficult. So we're happy to have one less.
Haley, can you talk?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, John.
I was just going to point out that the loads in these houses are so low that we actually had a hard time finding a mini split that was appropriate. So I think we're using the smallest mini split that we could find that in order to heat and cool, and even that's a little bit oversized, actually. So.
See, I have two more questions left. Connie, am I missing any? I have one about embodied carbon. So was embodied carbon accounted for in the project? I saw that there's a lot of polyisofoam, which we often see in passive house projects, but it's getting a little bit of a dirty word, dirty product because of the embodied carbon. It looked like you had some reused product on site too. Can you speak a little bit to that, Haley? Or whoever.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to using the recycled 4-inch polyiso on the exterior. So we were originally, Jonathan had designed it to do 3 inches of mineral wool, but we couldn't attain the R value that we needed to. So we unfortunately had to go to the polyiso, but doing the reclaimed polyiso kind of made us feel better about using that product, and it also was about 1/4 of the cost. So for the exterior insulation for all buildings, I got a quote that was like $80,000, and we got it down to like 17 or something. So we're pretty psyched about that.
Wow. That is the last of the questions that I see here. Connie, did I miss any? I'm scrolling through them.
We just have one about the cost. How does this cost compare to normal construction?
Yeah, so the cost is pretty comparable. The area where it becomes, or people kind of get turned off from building this way, is the fact that they're small homes. The cost per square foot seems very high. But like I said, I mean, because like a conventional house, you're getting maybe like 1,500 square feet as opposed to 900 gross square feet for these guys. But yeah, it's a just much higher quality product and higher performance.
Can I speak on that for 1 second on cost?
Yeah.
So obviously you're using more insulation and you're putting in better windows. So these things are it's an added cost. when you're going for these high performance homes. But there are strategies that you can use to sort of balance that off. One of them is this frost protected shallow footing, which reduces the need for this footing that goes below frost line. So you're removing all of that formwork and concrete and rebar and labor to save money to essentially put more insulation underneath the slab. Another thing is when you bring the loads down like this, you're significantly reducing your equipment cost for heating and cooling. But for the size of the equipment, it's going to be much smaller.
Never mind the bill.
Yeah, never mind the bill, right? But not speaking about that, just an actual construction cost.
Mm-hmm.
And the windows is usually the hard part, to finding these triple glazed windows that are in the sub 0.2 U value area. It can be expensive, but this is changing, and especially in these windows have sort of been around for a while in Europe, but it's coming around, and North American window industry is catching up to it. And you can find Harveys and Silverlines and these traditionally more inexpensive type windows in this 0.2, 0.18 zone that will work for these kind of houses. So it's doable to try to build like this and keep the costs relatively equal.
Great, thank you. So I want to thank Kevin, Jonathan, John, and Haley for presenting today, and just recommend that everybody checks out the tour for more fantastic details on Friday, the digital tour. We have an upcoming case study on this project that should be out early next year, and be sure to take the survey at the end in just a couple seconds when this webinar closes, to get your AIA credits, and let us know if you need any other certification acknowledgements for attending this webinar today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Webley.
Thanks.